Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Mark Gillette, and I'm a sociology professor at Valencia College in Orlando, Florida. And what I'd like to do today is spend a few minutes sharing with you my thoughts about critical thinking. And so in my sociology classes, I ask my students to purchase one of these critical thinking guides. The Critical Thinking Guide is published by the Foundation for Critical Thinking, and I will put their website address, the URL, in the comments section after this live event ends. But I appreciate you spending some time with me today, and as usual, I'll ask you to subscribe if you aren't already a subscriber. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you know when I add additional videos to my channel. So I've entitled today's discussion, "To Think or Not to Think?" That is the question. Over on the right-hand side of your screen, if you are on a laptop or a desktop, you should have the option of participating in the live chat. And right now, I am going to type something in the chat box so that you can see it come up. And if any time you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to type in your comments and I will try to see them as they come through and address them. So I started teaching about 25 years ago. And when I started teaching, I quite frankly didn't know what I was doing. I think that's probably quite common for teachers that have never taught before. And you kind of learn on the job. And so when I first started teaching, specifically sociology, what I tended to do was to read out of the book and have my head focused towards the podium. And I didn't look at the students and I didn't get them engaged and involved because I didn't want any controversy in the class. Well, as time passed, I started to really decide that sociology, which for those who may not know it, is the scientific study of human society, is full of controversy. That's part of the human experience, controversy. And so I started moving away from the podium and spending more time trying to engage students, in essence, trying to get them to really think about what we were talking about in class. And I found that to be the right path to go down. Because all too often, I think in the educational system, teachers are trying to get students to think about things the way that they think about them, rather than getting students and encouraging students to think for themselves. So as time passed, I was fortunate enough to have a colleague who introduced me to the Critical Thinking Guide that I mentioned earlier. And so when I got the Critical Thinking Guide myself, I read through it and said, this is some really awesome stuff. And not only did I find it important to teach my students about critical thinking, I also found it important for me to try to instill these values and skills into my own daily life. Now, this does not come without challenge. And I say it doesn't come without challenge because, from my perspective, and something that I often talk about in my sociology classes, is that I believe that we are highly influenced by society and other peoples. And I dare to say that I believe that we are, in essence, programmed. We are programmed much like a computer. People give directions to a computer, and a computer will spit out results based on what has been put into it. And I'm afraid that I think for most human beings, though not all, we are programmed. So who programs us? Well, certainly our parents program us, our siblings, our extended family, grandparents, our siblings, aunts and uncles, and so on and so forth. But beyond the family, there are lots of other people that influence us and shape us into who we are, including our friends and our peers, people that we go to church, synagogue, or temple or mosque with, along with the religious leader. People that we go to school with, people that we live around, our neighbors, our culture and our country also highly influences who we are, what we do, and how we think. Now, a lot of people believe that that's not necessarily a bad thing. And indeed, as I look around the world that we live in, a lot of parents specifically feel like it is their duty to program their children to make sure that their children are doing what they believe is the right thing to do, the right careers to go into, the right religion to follow, the right values to hold, the right way to vote, and so on and so forth. Now, I don't have children, so I can't speak to how I would actually raise a child, but I will say that there are consequences, I believe, to programming other people, including your children. And that is, from my perspective, taking away their individual ability to think for themselves, to make their own choices, to do what they feel is right for them to do. You know, this is all very complicated stuff. Critical thinking is not something that a lot of people, I believe, understand or take part in because it's a difficult thing. And if it was an easy thing, a lot of people would be doing it, but it's not easy to do. I want to I want to define critical thinking for you. And I'm not going to put this in my own words. Actually, I will in just a moment after I share with you what the authors of this critical thinking guide, how they define critical thinking. So, according to them, the definition of critical thinking is that it is the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view to improving it. And the way that I like to put that in other words, or to simplify it, is that critical thinking is thinking about how we think. Okay. Thinking about how we think. As an educator, I realize that we teachers try to teach a whole lot of different things to young people, be them first graders or be them people in their 50s and 60s that are in college. We try to teach them math and proper English, and we try to teach them um, physics formulas, and we teach chemistry and biology and the social sciences. But how often do we truly take the time and the effort to encourage and teach people how to think for themselves? I often poll my students and ask them, how many of you have ever taken a class that infuses critical thinking into the curriculum? And I may have one or two hands go up in a class of 25 to 30 students. I go on then to ask my students, how many of you have ever taken a class that's solely dedicated to critical thinking, thinking about how we think? I often get one or no hands at all, which tells me that our educational system is failing us. It's failing us because it's not doing what I think is the ultimate thing that educational systems should do, and that is to train us and teach us how to think better, and how to think for ourselves. Okay. And so that's why I've titled today's conversation, To Think or Not to Think. That is the question. Well, we all think all the time, something that we do all the time. But it looks like, according to my little thing here, your connection is unstable. Please wait while we try reconnecting. I'm hoping that I'm still connected. So I'm just going to keep going, assuming that I am still connected. Um, so we, I kind of lost my train of thought when I saw that come up. We all do thinking. We do it all of the time. However, what is the quality of the thinking that we are taking part in? Okay. What I often show in class to demonstrate what I think has happened is I do this with my students. And what am I showing? I'm showing that I think a lot of what's going on in our heads and our minds has been pounded in there by other people. And in many cases, things have been shoved down our throats. And if you think about it, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year of having information pounded into your head and shoved down your throat, you're going to start to believe that all of this stuff is true and it's real and it's based in facts and reality because it's what you know. And we human beings feel very, very comfortable with what we know. It's what we don't know that we're fearful of. Another example I like to use in class is imagine that instead of being born where you were born, that you were born in a different country. All right. I often use the example of, let's say, India on the other side of the world. If you or I were born in India, you and I would be very, very different people than who we are in so many different ways. We would speak a different language. We would dress differently. We would eat very different types of things than what we currently eat. The music that we listen to would be very different. Globalization is changing a lot of this stuff. But even with globalization, as strong as it is today, there are still lots and lots of differences between, let's say, Americans and people that live in India. But going much deeper than those tangible things that I just mentioned, let's think about, faith systems. If you and I were born in India, you and I would probably be a Hindu because the majority of people that live in that country are Hindu. Okay, why are they Hindu? Because that's where they were born and raised. Okay, much like many of the people born in the Western Hemisphere are Christian. Why? Because they were born in the Western Hemisphere. Had nothing to do with individual thought or thinking or choice. It had everything to do with what was continually banged into your head and shoved down your throat. Now, you may not see it as something bad necessarily, but I do. I see it as bad because I believe that other people are not allowing you to think for yourself and to make your own choices. And they are imposing their value system and their beliefs upon other people. And especially if they're young people, they have no ability to say, wait a minute, this is not who I am. This is not, or give me time to decide who I am and where I need to go and the values that I should hold. So I don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that parents or other people shouldn't be influencing young people to be good and to have good goals and to treat people well, but I believe that it is up to each individual person to do their own thinking and to make their own choices in life. Okay. So um, there's a concept that I want to bring up that I talk about in my introductory sociology classes. And that concept is the sociological perspective that's often called the sociological imagination. It's the same thing. And what is it? The sociological perspective is that there are social forces in our world that shape and mold us into who we are. Those social forces are other people, individuals, groups, family, friends, people we go to school with, people we work with, people we go to religious services with, our country, our culture. These are all social forces that are shaping and molding us into who we are. But when we really think about who we are, when we really delve deep and think about who we truly are, we are the product of other people. We are the product of society. Okay? We are not the product of our own thinking. This is a concept that I had a very, very hard time coming to terms with myself, because if I was to go back to when I was a teenager in my early 20s, no one could ever, ever tell me that most of the choices that I had made were really not my choices at all. No one could ever convince me of that. But as I've gotten older and I've studied sociology and I've done a lot of reading, I've done a lot of traveling, and I've done certainly a lot of thinking about this stuff, I really have concluded that, myself included, much of who I am, much like other people, is the result of the sociological perspective. Okay. The banging of information into our head day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, and the shoving of information down our throat. So, as I mentioned earlier, what does that produce? That produces a programmed human being. Life is very short. If we are lucky, we get 80, 90 years on the planet. And so many of us are so busy consuming our time with work, maybe taking care of children, but we don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out who we are and how we got to where we are, if we like where we are, and if we don't, what we're going to do about getting to the next step. And I think critical thinking can help us with that. I think about critical thinking much like a garden. So here we are in this crisis. Many of us are in our homes, not leaving. We've been told to shelter so that we aren't spreading this virus that's going around from one person to the next. So I have a lot of free time at home that I don't normally have. And so I went out and I planted a garden in the backyard. And I planted some flowers and I planted some lettuce and some beans. And so when it comes to gardening, if you aren't familiar with gardening, here's the way that it typically works. You don't just go outside, throw the beans, the seeds down, turn around, walk away, and come back 2 or 3 months later and expect to see all these beautiful tomatoes and beans and lettuce and so on and so forth. If you know anything about gardening, there's a lot of work that goes into actually planting the garden. Okay, so you go out and you till up the soil and make sure that it's not hard, and you pull out the weeds, and then you make the ruts and you put the seeds in, and then you cover them up, and then you put a little fertilizer, and then you put water. Even then, you don't just walk away and come back 2 or 3 months later to check out what you've got, because you're not going to have anything there. Every single day, I go out to the garden at least one time and I see, oh, there's a weed. I got to pull the weed out. Oh, it didn't get enough water this morning, so let me put some extra water. Oh, it got too much, so let me turn the sprinklers off so that they don't come on tomorrow. And I do that day after day after day after day, because I want in 2 to 3 months to see that there's actually something in the garden I can harvest and eat. I don't want to do this just as busy work, right? So, what is this all about? This is about cultivating your garden. And cultivating your garden requires daily effort and work to make sure that you're doing everything that you know to do, so that garden is fruitful. Our minds are exactly the same way. Sometimes we get weeds in these things, and the weeds start to take over. And we have to take those weeds out. We have to pull those weeds out to make sure that they don't take over the entire system. And that's a daily occurrence, because if you know anything about weeds, weeds grow all the time really fast. So you can't just ignore it for a month or 2 months or a year or 10 years or 20 years and assume that, okay, I can come back and do my weeding. Mm-mm. In other words, we have to monitor what goes on in our brain all of the time. We can't take anything for granted. We have to go in there and pull the weeds. We have to water. We have to water the garden. We have to water or feed the brain. We need to feed it with good information, valid information, realistic information, positive, if any way, information. Too often people are spending a lot of time getting information from really bad people and really bad sources, which only does really bad thing. Garbage in, garbage out. For example, I was once a big consumer of news. I'd sit and watch the television news for hours. And I did that because I wanted to be an informed person. But then, after thinking about it, I started realizing that maybe what these people are telling us, maybe they're telling us only a portion of the truth and they're not telling us the full truth. Maybe there's an agenda going on here. I may sound a little paranoid. Maybe conspiracy theory might come up. But there's actually scientific research that I can show you, sociological scientific research that shows that the media, at least today, is extremely biased. I personally believe that the media is no longer interested in, as it may have been many years ago, of telling us what's happening in our community, our state, our country, and the world. It seems to me that today's media is only interested in one thing, and that's dollars, revenue. They want to make money. And how do you make money? You tell people what they want to hear. You make your news so dramatic that people want to tune in to see what's going on because they're going to help you. They're going to keep you out of trouble. They're going to tell you what to do so that things don't get worse. They're going to maybe save you from a bad situation. So you don't want to miss out on that. The problem is they're going to tell us anything that they want to tell us so that they get more money from advertising. And I think that's unfortunately the truth. I could be wrong. I don't think that I am. So we get bad information from so many different sources, so many different places. The media, my recommendation is if you watch the news, stop watching the news. Don't do it. We still all need to be informed on what's going on. So go online, find some good, websites, get some good information, but don't drown in the information. Deal with life without the drama that the media will provide to you. They make a bad situation much, much worse. Okay? We get lots of bad information from other sources, certainly other than just the media, though. Everywhere that we go, there's bad and misleading information. All right. As a teacher, I often like to admit to my students, I don't know everything. No one person, no one on this planet, no human being knows everything. And we should never put people up on a pedestal because we think that they just know a whole bunch. Now, sure, there are people that have studied certain topics for many, many, many years. They have multiple degrees in something. But I bet if you ask them, do you know everything about what you studied for most of your life? I think if they're honest, they're going to say no. I think I've only scratched the surface. Beware of those that claim to know ultimate truth and ultimate reality. There are lots of people out there. There are lots of people on the internet, people on television, people on the radio. They believe, at least that's what I think they think, that they know what's really going on. They know ultimate reality. They know the truth. Beware. Beware. They don't. They don't know the truth. And how do I know that? I know that because I'm a human being. And quite frankly, I don't feel like I know that much. I've got some degrees, master's degree, doctoral degree. Doesn't mean that I'm a genius. It means that I was able to get through the process of getting a degree. Doesn't make anyone a genius. Degree, no degree, doesn't matter. We humans, I believe, know very, very little about everything. And if you ever come across anyone in your life who claims that they know everything or they are 100% certain that this is the way that something is, please be careful. Okay? It's easy to fall into that trap. It's very easy to fall into the trap of someone telling you that they know that this is the way something is and looking up to that person, or that person may be very charismatic and you believe, wow, this person really knows what they're doing. That doesn't mean that they necessarily know what they're doing or what they're talking about. Okay. Other places we get bad information from, other than the media and teachers, are parents. Now, I might have some of my students that will watch this video, and they may have their parents there watching. I'm not sure. And the parents will not appreciate what I'm getting ready to say. But the fact of the matter is, parents do not know everything. Parents have their perspective on life, but their perspective on life may or may not reflect reality. And what parents often do is they put their reality onto their kids. And they tell their kids that this is the way that it is. Well, I hate to break it to you, but just because parents think that this is the way that it is, it doesn't mean that's the way that it is. Okay. Now, here's one that some people may have an issue with, but I believe that this is a really big one. And I can tell you from personal experience that it's a really big one where we can often get bad information from. And that's from our religious leaders, our churches, our mosques, our synagogues, our temples, or any place that we might go for any type of spiritual growth. Now, please do not get me wrong. I am not here to tell you that what you believe is wrong. I'm most definitely not here to tell you that you need to convert to the way that I'm thinking. I'm definitely not here to tell you that you need to convert to how I think. That's the opposite of what critical thinking is all about. We all have our own path that we have to go down in life. But going down that path, I believe, should require some level of being open minded, which means that just because you have had this particular religion or spiritual belief pounded into your head or shoved down your throat doesn't mean that that's what you should necessarily stick with your entire life. So, getting back to the religious leaders and the religious institutions, I find it quite amazing when I think about religion that there are so many different religions in the world that we live in today. Many religions have long gone, but we have so many different religious and spiritual beliefs. So many. And if we ask ourselves, why am I what I am, if you are what we were raised into? So I'm seeing that I'm having a connection issue again. Please wait while we try reconnecting. So I'm hoping that I'm not going offline. But so what I was saying is that we are what we are, most of us. Our religious faith is based in what we were raised in. So, using the example that I talked about earlier, India, if you and I were to be, we were born in India rather than where we were born, we would be a Hindu and we wouldn't have anything to do with it. And I bet you, as an as a Indian living in India, being a Hindu, you and I would be very supportive of the Hindu faith and religion. It would be the religion. It would be the right one. But again, think about all the different religions and faith systems and beliefs that are out there. How? Thank you, Anastasia, for letting me know that I'm fine, because it keeps showing periodically that I don't have a good connection, and hopefully I do. So thank you for that. But so we have all of these different religious and belief systems. And so here's the kicker. The kicker is everybody thinks that they're right. So let's go through this. The Jews think that they're right. And by the way, there are several major denominations in the Christian faith. I'm sorry, in the Jewish faith: Orthodox, Reform, and Conservative. So you have a lot of different varying beliefs within Judaism, very extreme differences, yet one group feels like they're right and the other group feels like they're right. And well, wait a minute, somebody's got to be wrong. Muslims feel that they're right. Two major denominations in the Islamic faith, Sunni and Shia, different beliefs. They both think that they're right. Somebody's got to be wrong. The Christian faith, three major denominations: Catholics, Protestants, and Orthodox. Multiple subdivisions of those three major denominations. Within the Protestant faith alone, you've got Lutheran, Methodist, Episcopalian, United Church of Christ, Evangelical, Baptists, Southern Baptists, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and I can go on and on and on, but I won't. Guess what? The Jehovah's Witnesses think that they're right. The Lutherans think that they're right. The Seventh-day Adventists think that they're right. The Catholics think that they're right. The Orthodox think that they're right. Somebody's got to be wrong. You have Hinduism. You have Buddhism, which is truly more of a philosophy than it is a faith or a religious system. Confucianism, Taoism. There are so many different faith and spiritual systems that we're not going to take the time to get into that right now. But here's what I ask you when it comes to getting bad information from different groups of people, because that's what we're speaking about at the moment. And that is, do you believe that what you follow is the truth? Because if you are like most people, the answer will be yes. Because everybody believes that when it comes to this religion thing, that they have this figured out, that what they believe is right and what other people believe is wrong. I can tell you, as a former evangelical Christian, this is exactly the way that I thought in my life. I am right. If you don't believe what I believe, you're wrong. And see, with this religion thing, the consequences are severe. Hell. So let's sprinkle in a little bit of fear here. And all of a sudden, I believe, this is my opinion, that you now get people thinking and believing and maybe even doing things that they might not otherwise do because of the fear. Oh my God, I cannot get this one wrong. The consequences are so severe. I'd better stick with what I know. I simply don't know any religious people at all that say something like this. I don't know. I just don't know that I'm on the right path. I'm not sure that my religion, my faith, my group has this figured out. That's not the way this works. The way this works is I know the truth. We know the truth. You, however, are lost. You clearly don't see reality, and you need to come over to my way of thinking. That should be a red flag. But unfortunately, for so many people, including myself, it's not. So we have to be careful what we believe when we go to our churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, or whatever it is, and what we read when it comes to religion, because it's one story. And I believe it's not necessarily the story. In other words, the truth. It is a truth. And again, when it comes to critical thinking, and how do you apply that to yourself when it comes to the issue of religion? Well, have you ever truly, truly, truly questioned what you believe, what your beliefs and your religious beliefs are? And I often, if I ask, I don't think that that's possible. I truly don't believe that that's possible because one of the tenets of critical thinking is thinking with an open mind, being willing to admit that you're wrong, being willing to talk to people that you know look at the world differently than you and have different beliefs and values, being willing to read things that will challenge what you believe. And if you do all that stuff, if you talk to people of different religions, if you read books that criticize what you believe in, if you watch documentaries, if you travel and you see the other faith systems and religions, and you really start to question what you believe and how maybe it was probably pounded in your head and shoved down your throat, you will probably start to conclude, you know what? I don't know. Actually, when it comes to this whole religion thing, I think that that's the only rational and logical conclusion that we human beings can come to, and that is, I don't know. Now, I think there may be some people that will highly disagree with me on that, but that's what critical thinking shows me. It shows me that I'm a human being. I don't really know that much. There's no way for me to know what's going on out there. And so, why should I just make it up in my head? Or why should I just believe what other people have imposed upon me in my life? So, I don't want to make this a whole religion preaching thing. I'm just kind of talking about where we get bad information from. And so, bringing it back to the garden that I was talking about earlier, we have to cultivate our gardens. We have to cultivate our minds. We have to constantly monitor what's going on in here. Take out the weeds, fertilize with good information, water with good information. Think for ourselves. Think with an open mind. Realize that none of us know everything. Realize there's so much to be known about so many different things. I love astronomy. One of the many reasons that I love astronomy is because there are the universe is incredibly big. It's just incredibly big. And so here we are living on little tiny planet Earth, going around our star that we call the sun. We have learned through astronomy and cosmology and through physics and studying the universe that we live on a very, very normal, we live in a solar system that has a star, our sun, that's very common. Nothing special about it at all. We live on a planet which it seems like more and more as time passes is probably pretty normal. We're learning a lot about what's called exoplanets. An exoplanet is a planet that's in another solar system that's orbiting another star. And to date, we know about over 4,000 exoplanets. You know, think about it. Back in the early 1990s, we didn't even know that there was such a thing as an exoplanet. Now, in the year 2020, we know that there are over 4,000 exoplanets out there, and that's just what we know. And if you find one exoplanet orbiting one other star out there, it's pretty safe to say that there are probably trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of exoplanets out in the universe. We're small. We're just living on one little tiny rock planet, and I don't think we have a clue of what's truly going on. I don't know who said it, but the saying goes, the more I learn, the more I realize I didn't know that much to begin with. And that's truly, truly the case. The people that scare me the most are the ones that think they know everything. And I have found that the people that think they know everything, they come across as experts, are the ones that know the least. But they actually believe, their perception is that they know a lot. It's scary. Unfortunately, a lot of these people get elected as politicians, but I don't want to make this a political discussion. Um, so we're talking about critical thinking. I would like to share with you what do critical thinkers do? Now, here are a few things that critical thinkers will do. Number one, critical thinkers will question everything. When? All of the time. As a critical thinker, you won't take anything for granted. There's no book that's ever been written. There's no human that's ever lived that you trust or believe everything that the book or that person says. It's not that you want to become super skeptical in your life and to go around and not believe anything under any conditions. You don't want to do that. I'm talking about the big things in life. Okay, the big things in life where someone who is very charismatic, has a lot of authority, comes across as knowing something, and they are this is the way that it is. Well, no, a critical thinker will go, well, that's your perception of the way that things are. And your perception may or may not match reality. Often through social science research, what we find is that reality is over here, our perception is over here, and the two don't match. We think the world is this way, but in reality, the world is not that way at all. All right. So a critical thinker will question everything all the time, at least the big things in life. A critical thinker will gather and assess relevant information. What does that mean? That means you got to get out of your comfort zone and go out and get information from lots of different sources. Don't go to the people that you know, and especially the people that you know that will confirm what you already believe to be the truth. That's not going to help you. What I encourage you to do, what critical thinking will encourage you to do, is to go out and find people that look at the world differently than you, look at topics differently than you. Look for documentaries, read books that challenge what you believe to be the truth. That's what a critical thinker will do. Someone who's not a critical thinker will go out and find people and books and documents and documentaries, whatever the case may be, that will just continue to reinforce what they already believe to be truth. And they're like, oh, look, these people believe this. This book tells me this. These people. And so they're like, yeah, this is truth. Oh, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's comfortable living in our little boxes. We love living in our little boxes because the boxes have walls around it and we see what's happening in our environment. That makes us feel safe. But when we get out of our boxes, proverbial boxes, and we see that the world is big, it may cause us to have fear because, oh my God, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. How should I react to this? How should I think? There's so many choices. There's so many different ways of looking at this. But that's where I think we grow in life. We grow, we mentally grow by exposing ourselves to different ways of thinking and doing and living. That's one of the reasons I love traveling so much, to see how other people around the world experience the human condition of living. And then I come back home and I go, you know what? I may not have enjoyed what I saw, but it is another way to live. Or sometimes I go somewhere and I go, hey, I kind of like this. I sure wish that we would do this in the country I live in, my country. But without those experiences, without the without watching documentaries, without reading books that challenge what I believe, without talking to people that I know disagree with me, I won't ever get that opportunity. All I will have is my little world, and I will believe that what I believe is right and everyone else is wrong. That's not only bad for me, it's also bad for other people because I'm judging them based on my perception of what's right and what's wrong. As I mentioned earlier, critical thinkers will think with an open mind. That means thinking about what are all the possibilities. Always having an open mind towards knowing I don't know that much. And so there will come a day where new information is presented to me, and I need to have an open mind towards if that new information should change or tweak the way that I think about things. And hopefully you would allow that, because it would be a real shame to have a certain mindset about something and say, okay, this is the way that it is. And then something happens in life where you're presented with new information and you look at it and go, oh well, I don't care. I'm still going to stick with what I believe. That's crazy. But many human beings will do just that. Many human beings will stick with what they know just because, well, it's what I know. It's what I feel comfortable with. You don't want to do that. Take in that new information, process that new information, and let it be allow you to become a more complete, full, expressive human being. A critical thinker will also test what they believe to be true. All right. What does that mean? That means that we can't take for granted what's been banged into our head and shoved down our throat as being ultimate truth and reality. We have to go through and think about all the things that we believe and what we value and dissect them very carefully. Go, why do I think this way? What influenced me to believe this? Okay, testing what we believe to be true. I don't want to go past the 60-minute mark, but there are a few more things that I'd like to share with you. So we've got a few more minutes. And one of the things that I'd like to share with you, I just love this little booklet. If you don't have one, I recommend that you get one. You can find some of this stuff online. Again, it's printed by the Foundation for Critical Thinking. I think they do an awesome job. To me, this is what higher education should be all about, sharpening people's ability to think and to think for themselves and to question. Um, so one of the things that's talked about in this book is what's called the problem of egocentric thinking. And basically, egocentric thinking is thinking that's all about me. It's all about me. Works for me. It's good. Doesn't work for you. Too bad. It's not my problem. Okay. So, and again, as we are starting to wrap up here, if you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to type them in the chat box. For those that are watching this later, naturally, you won't have the opportunity to do that, but you will be able to see any of the chat that occurred during this presentation. So I want to quickly go over some of the major problems in our thinking, in human thinking. And here's the first one. The first one is, it's true because I believe it. All right. That's called innate egocentrism. I believe it. I'm sorry. It's true because I believe it. All right. So here's some words that you may not want to hear, but this is the truth, and I think you might agree with me. You can believe whatever you want to believe. That doesn't make it the truth. Okay, let me say that again. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but that does not make it the truth. The truth is the truth, whatever the truth is. Okay. Another major flaw in human thinking when it comes to egocentrism is it's true because we believe it. So the first statement is, it's true because I believe it. And there may come a time in someone's individual thinking where they may go, you know what? As I look around, there's no one else that thinks the way that I think. And so therefore, maybe I'm wrong. Doesn't always happen, but I think that's more likely to happen than in the second statement. And the second statement is, it's true because we believe it. Why? Because if you can get other people to believe what you believe, or you believe what other people believe, and you congregate and hang out with one another, then what you're doing is simply among each other reinforcing what you believe to be true. So you're just simply reinforcing what's already there, or what's believed among a group of people. And so the thinking might go, well, as I look around, there are other people that believe what I believe, so we must be right. If it was only me, then maybe I could conclude that I've got some issues. But there are lots of other people that believe this, so yeah, we must be good to go. Here's something to give some thought to. Many, many, many years ago, here on good old planet Earth, human beings believed that the Earth was flat. Now, most of us today, when we hear about that, we go, oh my God, they just, how silly is that? And that was so um, primitive, and oh my, I can't believe it. Well, guess what? If you and I were to live back during that period of time, you and I would have also have probably have believed that the Earth was flat. Well, guess what? We now know that the Earth is not flat, even though there are people out there, flat earthers, who still today believe that the Earth is flat. The Earth is not flat. Can't convince them that of anything else. But so what am I trying to show here? I'm trying to show that even if the majority of people in a community, in a country, in the world believe in something, that still does not make it factual. Even if you have millions or billions of people, human beings that believe something, that belief does not make that reality. Okay. Another one, it's true because I want to believe it. Here again, some words of wisdom. You can believe something all you want to believe it. It doesn't make it reality. You can believe it with every ounce of energy within you. I believe this. This is the way that it is. Yes, I have no questions. I have no doubt. This is the way that it is. It doesn't make it real. Oh, it may make it real to you, but it doesn't mean that it is objectively real. We're human beings. We don't know that much. There are lots of questions out there that we simply do not have answers to. And I believe that when we feel comfortable with not knowing answers, or knowing that we simply cannot get to answers or ultimate reality, that we're going to take a lot of stress off of our lives. A lot of anxiety will go away because we spend a lot of time thinking that we know everything and things are not working the way that we think that they should be working. And why are these people doing this and they should be doing this? And why is this way? It should be that way. Well, that's just our perception. That's our reality. It is not objective reality. Okay. Another one, it's true because I have always believed it. Now we add the element of time. A lot of people that are traditional or conservative, they, I believe, lean on the issue of, well, this has been around a long time. We've done this a long time. Therefore, it must be good and we should continue this. No, not necessarily. Just because something has been practiced 10 years, 50 years, 500 years, 2,000 years, 5,000 years doesn't make it good, doesn't make it bad, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it what it is, something that's been practiced for a certain amount of time or believed for a certain amount of time. An example that I like to use is slavery. Slavery was in the United States, or talk only about the US, practiced for a really long time. And a lot of people supported it and thought it was the right thing to do. And they found religious ways of backing up what they were doing, enslaving people, which is crazy. But people thought it was the right thing to do. Well, luckily, we've come to our senses with some of this stuff and moved away from it. But if you were to go back not long ago when that was practiced, the majority of people thought that that was the good thing to do. It was the right thing to do. And so they continued doing it. Just because something has been practiced a long time doesn't necessarily make it good or bad one way or the other automatically. All right. Well, I see that we're coming up on the hour. If there's one message that I like to get across to my sociology students, that one overarching message is a message of, we can think for ourselves. We don't have to live our life based on what we have been programmed to be. That's good news. To me, that's the good news of the day. Why? Because we're human beings. We're not programmed robots. If life is simply all about being programmed to think a certain way, to act a certain way, to believe certain things, wow, how awesome is that? But I think we're called to something much, much higher. And that something is trying to figure out who we truly are. Takes a lot of work. Few people want to do it because it's too much work, it's too fearful. When you start to change, because they know you to be who they know you to be, and all of a sudden, you're a different person. I'm getting that your connection is unstable again. Please wait while we try reconnecting. So I don't know if I'm still live or not. I guess I'm back again. To be all we can be, we have to do lots of deep, deep thinking. And that deep thinking is called critical thinking. As I was mentioning a moment ago, when you start to change who you are and the way that you think, you're going to come across people in your life that aren't going to appreciate it. What I often tell my students is, a lot of people are not interested in you being who you are, who you want to be. They're interested in you being who they want you to be. And when you are not who they want you to be, there will be trouble. And if you don't believe me, try this out. Test it out. As I often encourage my students to do, make up a complete lie, something that's completely not true about you, and tell your family and your friends and try to convince them that it's the truth and watch how they respond. In most cases, though not all, it's not going to go well. Why? Because unfortunately, in many cases, the fact of the matter is people are not interested in you being who you are and going on your own journey. They're interested in you being who they want you to be. And that's, in my opinion, not the way to live life. That's existing. And life is too short to exist. All right, so that's all I have to share with you today. I hope that I've given you something to give some thought and consideration to. Again, I want to reiterate to you that my intention in doing this was not to tell you that what you believe is wrong. I'm not trying to convert you to anything at all. I'm not trying to tell you that you're bad. I'm certainly, hopefully, not coming across as a know it all because I know that much, maybe that much, very little. And I'm on my own personal journey like the rest of us. So I just thought I would share some thoughts and opinions with you and for you to give it some thought to see if it has any value. So thank you so much for joining me today. Um, and again, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell. I don't have any live YouTube events scheduled anytime in the next week or two, but um, depending on what comes up, I might come up with something. So check out my webpage or my YouTube channel frequently. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great rest of your afternoon or whatever time of the day it is that you're watching this. Bye bye. Take care.